Recently, I have been reacquainting myself with a fine Discalced Carmelite friar by the name of Brother Lawrence. You may know him from a small collection of letters and writings of his called The Practice of the Presence of God. In many ways, like St. Francis of Assisi, Brother Lawrence was a young military man. He was very worldly, who went through, his own conversion experience before he gave himself entirely over to God. But he talks about this one life-changing event. He was about 18 years old, I believe, and it was in the wintertime. And he saw this tree completely stripped of its leaves, as trees are in the wintertime. But as he was looking at this tree, he received this incredible grace and insight into the wisdom of God. And he called to mind the springtime and how the leaves would return, the tree would flower, and then ultimately bear fruit. And he said from that moment on, he never once doubted divine providence. That is quite a grace, isn't it? It's quite a grace indeed. Never once doubted divine providence. How often do we find ourselves, as it were, feeling like that tree, stripped of our leaves and in a winter time, thinking that perhaps all hope is lost? Where is God? Is he present in my life? Does he even care? Kind of take that insight, that experience of Brother Lawrence, to your own prayer, and learn from, that leafless tree, what he had learned and the insight he gained. And ask God for the grace to simply trust. To simply trust. There is, as a matter of fact, an awful lot of wisdom and insight there is to be gained, in the things that God has created. But I think something happens when we look at ourselves as a society and as a culture, how we gradually and over time, without really realizing it, lose contact with nature and the natural world. We become, so civilized, as it were, in our towns and in our cities, and things can become so commercial, so industrial. And it leaves us cold. It can just absolutely leave us cold. If there was not anything to be gained by nature and everything to lose by losing contact with it, it is in this. Jesus Christ, the Word of God through whom all things were made, who became wisdom incarnate during his earthly ministry, used images of nature and the natural world, used images of our ordinary human workaday world to reveal to us divine realities that we could not attain by reason alone. And we look at some of the things that Jesus Christ says, and they are so deeply, intensely organic. Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of God and drink his blood, you can have no life in you. Let's look at today's gospel. What kind of union with us does Christ desire? What image can he propose of what this union would look like? I am the true vine. You are a branch. What is that telling us about the nature of our union with Jesus Christ? Is our union with Jesus Christ just simply an abstract idea? Is it a moral union? We simply agree with everything he says. What kind of union are we talking about? Well, clearly, he is talking about a union that becomes for us a vital, life-giving principle. That literally, without him, we can do nothing. Without him, we will die. Here's another exercise for you to help put flesh on these bones. As we see the trees starting to bud forth, go out into your yard and take a branch that is budding, cut it off, and put it somewhere in your home where you can consult it every day and spend a few moments meditating on the nature and reality and the consequence of mortal sin. I think we would gain an awful lot of wisdom and insight. But in part, how does this vital union with Jesus Christ come about? What is its operation? How does it work, in a very practical way? Well, he tells us, not by shifting the terms of the argument, but by replacing them. Because we heard Jesus Christ say quite plainly a couple of times, "Remain in me as I remain in you." But then towards the end of his lesson is where he makes the word shift and gives us some insight into how this comes about, what this union looks like. And he says, "If you remain in me and my words remain in you." So he didn't say, "I remain in you." He said, "My words." So he's clearly talking about a serious life of prayer. There is simply no way to get around or avoid it. And what does that prayer look like? What is it with our relationship with the Word that has anything to do with our union with Jesus Christ? It's not the Word as it is spoken that is so important. We already know that because when Jesus Christ taught, everybody who listened to him, there was one of two reactions to everything he said, right? On the one hand, there were people who heard his words, and his words produced faith in their hearts, and they became his disciples. But then on the other hand, there were those who heard his words, and what? Their hearts became hardened against him. I'm not saying that the spoken word, is not so important, but that's not what the story ends. Because it's not the spoken word that we are dealing with, that we are concerned about right now, but rather the fact that it is believed. That's the key. That the words are believed, and then they produce faith in our heart. And that is what becomes part of this vital, life-giving principle, that unites us to the person in Jesus Christ. The very Word of God, wisdom incarnate, who speaks to us. And we receive those words and we greet them with belief, and we give them the assent of faith. Why? Because, by his own admission, Jesus Christ is the truth. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus Christ cannot lie. Jesus Christ cannot deceive, nor can he be deceived. And so what becomes incumbent upon us is that a lot of times we will hear the words of Jesus Christ, but we have already made some previous decisions, let's say, that we have decided are true for us. And then you're confronted with the Word of God. And it can cause a bit of consternation, for sure. And it ought. When we approach Jesus Christ, we need to come to him in humility, in poverty, and with a desire and a willingness to be taught. Regardless of our patterns of thinking, regardless of the decisions we have made in the past, regardless of our opinions about the way we think things ought or should not be. We can all be confused. We can all be deceived. We can all be in error. You see, but this is what Jesus Christ says, that you are already cleansed by the word I have spoken. That the word of God spoken to us, when it is received with belief and we give the assent of faith, cleanses us. And brings us into greater conformity with the truth. And then what does Jesus Christ say the net result will be? He said, then, ask for whatever you want and it will be done for you. How come so many prayers go unanswered? How many so many prayers go unanswered? Well, the first and most obvious answer is that sometimes, myself included, sometimes we ask for things that are just flat out dumb. God's not going to give us dumb things, or listen to us when we say things that are dumb. Sometimes there's ignorance at work. We do not know what we are asking and what the implications might be. There's an awful lot that is hidden from our sight, being as short-sighted as we are, being as limited as we are in our capable of apprehending and grasping things. But see, what happens, in this vital, life-giving relationship with Jesus Christ and his spoken word that is received with belief and we give the assent of faith, is that in that cleansing, as we're brought more in conformity with the truth, what is going to be the natural and logical outcome? It will purify and strengthen our ability to reason and make sound judgments. And with sound judgment will come the ability to discern about the things we truly need, not the dumb stuff that we want. The stuff we actually need. But as always, it always comes down at the end of the day, do we trust?